Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Strait Science. Strait Science is an evening seminar series put on by the University of Alaska Fairbanks Northwest Campus here in Nome, and also the University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Sea Grant, also in Nome. Both Northwest Campus and Alaska Sea Grant, we are public servants of the Bering Strait region. We serve all peoples of the Bering Strait region, which is the homeland and waters of the Inupiaq, St. Lawrence Island Yupik, and Central Yupik peoples. So tonight, this is a very straight science talk in that we have Abby Baliey and Lily McEwen, and they are with the University of Missouri. And I've got to read it because I'm new to the word informatics, but they are graduate research assistants at the University of Missouri's 3D Heritage Informatics Lab. So maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that as well. And they are already at the 9:30 p.m. mark, just starting off to talk to us. So we're very grateful to Abby and Lily for taking the time in the middle of what's getting to be in the middle of the night for them, or what will be by the time they're done. So we're grateful to them talking to us all the way from Missouri and all the way in Central Standard Time. So kudos. And with that, this is a subject that is very interesting to the region, very interesting to me personally. I have a lot of questions already just about Midwest museums and the history of how things came away from this region. So with that, tell us all about how you are mapping Kawerak collections in Midwest museums. We're so glad you're both here. Take it away.
Great. Hello and welcome. And thank you, Gay and Straight Science, for the opportunity to share our research. And thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight. My name is Lily McEwen,
I'm Abigail Baliey.
and we are graduate research assistants at the University of Missouri's 3D Heritage Informatics Lab. We are presenting on our intersecting master's research about mapping core collections in Midwest museums. We will be talking about our approach to combining the mapping technique of geocoding with Indigenous knowledges for a comprehensive analysis of Kawerak region cultural heritage pieces in Midwest museum collections. In collaboration with Kawerak Inc., our work focuses on heritage pieces originating from the communities of the Kawerak region and the life cycle of Pacific walruses from habitat to heritage pieces made of walrus in museum collections. We would like to acknowledge that this research was carried out at the University of Missouri, which sits on the traditional homelands of the Osage Nation, the Oto, Kickapoo, Illiniwek, Iway or Bohojay, Meskwaki, Missouri, Sauk, and Quapaw people, and many other nations and peoples who've traveled through the region. We work with Kawerak Inc., the tribal nonprofit consortium of 20 federally recognized Alaska Native tribes in the Kawerak region. The Kawerak region spans parts of the Seward Peninsula and Bering Strait, and also includes St. Lawrence Island, King Island, and Little Diomede Island. For this project, we work with Kawerak Social Science Program Office and 9 Alaska Native knowledge holders who were previously selected by their communities to share their knowledge through the NSF project, 3-dimensional modeling, and digital repatriation of Arctic Indigenous heritage in the Bering Strait region of Alaska. As such, we would like to acknowledge that we work directly with Alaska Native Yupik, Inupiaq, and St. Lawrence Island Yupik knowledges and cultural heritage. So we understand that many of you may be familiar with the geography of the Kawerak region, but for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the region, this map shows the 20 federally recognized tribes in the Kawerak region of Alaska. Our project is part of an ongoing larger research project about Indigenous peoples' conceptualization of 3D digital models of their cultural heritage. Our MA research is funded by supplemental NSF funding from Art, Technology, Entrepreneurship, Commercialization Hub project, which focuses on increasing graduate student research and generating translational science. Our master's research is a collaborative project as it was co-created following the co-production of knowledge framework with our tribal collaborators at Kawerak Inc. Starting at project planning and at every stage of the research project, we met with Kawerak to consult about our MA progress and how best to proceed based on Kawerak's guidance. For our MA research, we take a different approach to the existing GIS tool of geocoding. We approach geocoding in a way that is informed by consultations with Kawerak Inc. and interviews with knowledge holders.
In our research and in our lab, we follow the care and fair principles, the co-production of knowledge framework, and Indigenous data governance to ensure a responsible and respectful research and learning community. A central part of this project is the co-production of knowledge, an approach that values and integrates both Indigenous knowledge systems and Western scientific methods. This collaborative process ensures that research is done with communities, not on them. We also follow Indigenous data governance principles, which recognize the rights of Indigenous peoples to control the collection, access, use, and sharing of data about their communities, cultures, and resources. These principles ensure that data is handled in ways that respect community authority, cultural protocols, and the responsibility to protect both knowledge and the relationship it represents. In line with this, we also align with FAIR principles to ensure data is well managed and usable, particularly in ways that support community goals. At the same time, we applied the CARE principles, which emphasize that data should serve the interests of Indigenous communities and be handled with respect and accountability. By balancing care and fair, we uphold both ethical responsibility and scientific integrity, reinforcing our commitment to equitable, respectful, and impactful research. All data produced through this project is currently owned by and will be transferred to Kawerak at the conclusion of the larger project through an existing and legally binding Memorandum of Understanding between the curators of the University of Missouri and Kawerak Inc. We have maintained continuous collaboration and open communication throughout the entire process. Their guidance has been essential in shaping the direction and integrity of this work. One of the goals of this project is to support Kawerak in their decision-making process with our research outcomes, so that they can use the data produced in building a foundation for future initiatives that strengthen both cultural and scientific efforts in the region. Geocoding refers to the process of converting aspatial XY points into spatial locations on Earth's surface. Traditional applications of geocoding include geolocating addresses for parcel delivery, emergency management planning, and mapping healthcare data. More recently, the application of geocoding has been used for digital humanities for historical mapping. We approach geocoding in a way that is informed by tangible and intangible Indigenous knowledges. For example, we geocoded to visualize places, regions, and sites that are of importance to Kawerak. We also create a Kawerak Region Gazetteer as a reference dataset for when we geocode. This gazetteer includes Kawerak Region place names and coordinates that came from Kawerak-approved documents, including the People of Kawerak and Dictionary of Alaska Native Place Names. These pieces of literature include oral histories and Indigenous names of Kawerak places and origin communities. Through conversations with Kawerak, the book People of Kawerak was discussed as a good source of information about Kawerak from an Indigenous perspective. After we found the names, we sat down with a map and followed the book to see where the place names were at as a reference of understanding of the Kawerak region. We then cross-referenced the places found in People of Kawerak with the Dictionary of Alaska Place Names for coordinates to create a regionally specific gazetteer.
For my master's research, my focus was on identifying, locating, and mapping where Kawerak Region tribes' heritage pieces are located in Midwest Museum collections, and where these heritage pieces originate from within the Kawerak region. One of the overarching goals of this research was to facilitate knowledge repatriation through our research frameworks by returning information about Kawerak heritage pieces to tribes by visualizing this information through maps. Knowledge repatriation occurs at the community level, and it is the reassertion and reclamation of traditional knowledges when cultural heritage pieces, documents, and stories are reconnected with communities. Through this project, we identified, visualized, and analyzed through geocoding where these collections exist so that this information is returned to Kawerak region tribes. Reuniting Kawerak with information about where known Kawerak collections are located informs Kawerak region tribes' decisions to pursue future physical requests for repatriation and reconnects them with this intangible knowledge imbued within these heritage pieces. In addition, these geocoded maps can help facilitate the development of relationships between Kawerak, museums, and researchers. The Midwest region was chosen as the area of focus as it is one of the largest regions of the lower 48 states, and therefore also one of the largest regions with unknown Kawerak region collections. In discussions with Kawerak, I learned that even one heritage piece is regarded as a collection, and that my project's focus should be on identifying accredited museums with physical pieces of cultural heritage rather than archival or photograph collections. Museums were identified through a list of accredited museums provided on the Association of Midwest Museums and the American Alliance Museums websites. Accredited museums were the focus of the inquiry as they are more likely to be legally required to follow NAGPRA, which is the Native American Graves Protection Repatriation Act of 1990. NAGPRA requires all federally funded institutions to inventory their collections and repatriate Native American human remains, funerary objects, sacred objects, and objects of cultural patrimony to culturally affiliated, federally recognized tribes upon request. Through this project, we newly identified 1,708 heritage pieces, in addition to the 1,618 heritage pieces previously known at the MU Museum of Anthropology and the Milwaukee Public Museum. Therefore, the grand total of Kawerak cultural heritage pieces known in Midwest Museum collections is 3,326 heritage pieces. The heritage pieces identified in collections are both ethnographic pieces, which are usually made of soft materials, as seen here with this pillow made of spotted seal fur, which is from Wales, and archaeological pieces, such as this ivory gambling bird figurine from St. Lawrence Island. Both of these pieces are housed at the University of Missouri Museum of Anthropology. We contacted 148 accredited Midwest museums. Of these, 54 responded to our inquiry. After reaching out to museums, we determined that there are 30 Midwest museums with Kawerak region cultural heritage collections. Another key component to this research was the ethnographic interviews with 8 knowledge holders from the region to understand locations that are of local and cultural significance. These knowledge holders shared their perspective on areas that should be protected when mapping and places in the community that they wanted mapped. These conversations helped inform decisions about geocoding locations in the Kawerak region. I then used geocoding to visualize the location of these collections in the Midwest with heritage from the Kawerak region. I approached geocoding in a way that was informed by consultations with Kawerak Inc. and interviews with knowledge holders. For example, I learned that there are certain protective considerations for mapping old village sites and archaeological sites. This map shows the location of the 30 Midwest museums with Kawerak region heritage collections. The Midwest region is comprised of North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. Only North Dakota, South Dakota, and Minnesota do not have Kawerak region collections. Michigan and Wisconsin are tied with the state with the most amount of collections, with 5 collections per state, while Kansas and Ohio are tied for the state with the least amount of collections, which is 2 per state. The points in this map represent the location of these 30 museums and also the size of these collections, which is represented by the color of the point. White dots represent collections with exactly 1 heritage piece, while collections with over 1,000 heritage pieces are represented by black points, while collections in between are represented in shades of gray, depending on whether they have fewer than 10, fewer than 50, or fewer than 500 Kawerak region heritage pieces in their collection. The largest collection of Kawerak region cultural heritage is housed here at the University of Missouri's Museum of Anthropology, with 1,123 heritage pieces, which outnumbers the Chicago Field Museum, which cares for 1,096 heritage pieces. The third largest collection is at the Milwaukee Public Museum with 495 heritage pieces. Our lab is working directly with these three museums. And here at the Museum of Anthropology, our lab has photographed the entire Kawerak region collection and is currently 3D modeling pieces selected by knowledge holders. And in the summer of 2024, our lab traveled to the Milwaukee Public Museum and photographed their entire Kawerak region collection and also 3D modeled about 50 pieces selected by knowledge holders. This map visualizes the geographic distribution of where in the Kawerak region heritage pieces originate from, and within the Midwest Museum collections, the count of these pieces from their origin community. There are 35 places represented on this map, 20 of which are the Alaska Native villages in the region. The other 15 places are either non-village sites or fuzzy data. In this map, the fuzzy data is the point representing heritage pieces with origins labeled as Bering Sea, Bering Strait, or Old Bering Sea, which were grouped together for this map. In discussions with knowledge holders, other heritage pieces with unknown origins or fuzzy data should be excluded from these maps as they cannot be certain that they have origins connected to the region. St. Lawrence Island has the most number of heritage pieces located in the Midwest Museum collections at 913 pieces. These pieces were labeled in the collections with St. Lawrence Island as its place of origin, but they could be from anywhere on the island. The second most common place where heritage pieces originate is Nome, with 890 pieces. As Nome is the hub in the region for trade, it is very likely that not all 890 pieces are from Nome, but rather are from places within the wider region and traveled to Nome, which were later then attributed to Nome. So within the Midwest, there are these 30 museums with Kawerak region heritage collections. And within these 30 museums, there are again 3,326 heritage pieces with identified origins from within the Kawerak region. There are, of those 3,326 pieces, there are 913 pieces which originate from St. Lawrence Island. The most common type of heritage piece are harpoon heads, with a total count of 91. There are also 40 heritage pieces associated with artists' names. And again, the largest collection is at the MU Museum of Anthropology with 1,123 heritage pieces. Within the 30 museums, there are 49 Kawerak region places that are represented in these collections. While there are 17 Kawerak region villages that are represented within the collections, there are 3 Kawerak region villages, the Alaska Native villages of Koyuk, Council, and Solomon, that are not represented in these collections.
For my master's project, I geocoded the life cycle of Pacific walruses as a resource and for subsistence purposes in the Kawerak region of Alaska. I also reconnected through geocoding walrus-related heritage pieces held in Midwest Museum collections back to the Kawerak region to reaffirm the intangible knowledge embedded within these pieces, to show how they remain deeply connected to their origin communities as part of the complete life cycle of Pacific walrus. A few questions I wanted to answer with my research include, what is the complete life cycle of a Pacific walrus starting from marine habitats through hunting and being processed in communities to museum collections? I also wanted to know, how do walruses sustain communities and carry intangible knowledge with them into museum collections? The piece that is shown is a cylindrical hollow tube of ivory engraved on both sides. One side has a scene of 2 men with rifles chasing 2 bears, while the other side is a scene with a man harpooning 2 seals. This piece was collected in 1990 from the vicinity of Nome, but is currently held at the Milwaukee Public Museum. I create a visual representation of the Pacific walrus life cycle based on publications from previous Kawerak projects, illustrating the reciprocal relationship between communities and their environments. In Alaska Native worldviews, Walruses are understood as non-human kin, and walrus-related pieces in museums retain the spirit of the animal, guiding respectful and non-wasteful use. Understanding this life cycle allows us to see that walrus not just as a resource, but as a relative with deep cultural and spiritual significance, shaping our data analysis by acknowledging the ongoing relationship between Alaska Native communities and their walrus kin, even when walrus-related pieces have been removed from their communities and placed in museum collections in the Midwest. The life cycle demonstrates how walrus is connected to Alaska Native communities both physically and culturally. The walrus is born and lives in its natural environment, traveling along sea ice and coastlines. Alaska Native hunters have long understood its behavior, migration patterns, and seasonal cycles. When a walrus is harvested, it is seen as giving itself to the community. This relationship is built on respect and sustainability. The initial harvest typically happens on the ice, where hunters apply traditional knowledge passed down through generations. The walrus is then transported back to the community, often through coordinated shared effort. Once home, it is processed within the community, and this is more than just work. It is a time when skills are taught, stories are shared, and knowledge is passed to younger generations. The food and usable materials are distributed among families, reaffirming social bonds and responsibilities. Sharing essential to community well-being, the walrus continues to nourish far beyond the moment of harvest. Parts of the walrus that cannot be used are returned to the environment, acknowledging a relationship between the animal, the land, and the people. However, some pieces leave the community, for example, carved ivory or other cultural items. Over time, many of these pieces were collected or removed and are now held in museums, often far from the people and the lands they are connected to. Even though these pieces are physically distant, they still carry intangible cultural knowledge. They contain knowledge of craftsmanship, identity, and place. But that knowledge is incomplete without the people and communities who created and used them. This life cycle shows that the walrus continues to live not only in the environment, but also in community relationships, traditional knowledges, and in the meanings held within museum collections today. This map represents the 23 Midwest museums that hold walrus pieces originating from the Kawerak region, with varying size collections. For example, there are a few collections with only 1 or 2 walrus-related pieces, while the Chicago Field Museum houses 371 walrus-related pieces. Here at the University of Missouri Museum of Anthropology, the collection holds 287 walrus-related pieces. Documenting and comparing these counts show how widely walrus cultural materials were dispersed and highlights the importance of reconnecting these pieces with their community and place-based knowledge. There are a few states in the Midwest that do not have any walrus-related pieces from the Kawerak region, including North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, and Minnesota. The state with the most museums with walrus-related heritage pieces is Wisconsin, with 5 museums. There are 1,992 ivory pieces and 8 non-ivory walrus pieces. These include teeth, skull, scapula, hide, and oosic. Kernel density estimation allows us to identify areas where walruses spend the most time by converting individual tracking points into a continuous surface of use intensity. This helps highlight core habitat zones and movement hotspots, supporting both ecological understanding and subsistence planning. Viewing the data as a kernel density map makes it easier to interpret because it smooths out individual data points and highlights areas of higher concentration. This allows spatial patterns and hotspots to be seen more clearly than when viewing discrete points. On this map, the areas shown in red represent higher density walrus presence. These red zones highlight regions where walrus activity is more frequent, which in turn helps contextualize how collections, habitat use, and cultural relationships overlap across the landscape. The data presented in this map is from a larger data set with over 400,000 data points. I put it down to just the Kawerak region, which has over 18,000 points on the map. This map, you can see the hotspots. The main one is just south of St. Lawrence Island and one north of St. Lawrence Island. There's also a few red spots by King Island. You can also see the canal that goes north and south as walrus move as the ice moves. We combined habitat data and museum collection data to create a comprehensive data set. Walrus tracking, foraging, and morphology data in the Kawerak region together show how walruses move across sea ice and coastal zones to access key feeding areas that support their health and survival. When combined, these datasets highlight the connections between habitat use, body condition, and changing environmental conditions, helping communities and researchers better understand and protect these relationships. The triangles on the map represent the place names recorded in museum collections of walrus-related cultural heritage pieces. Collating museum and habitat data, it reaffirms local knowledges that walrus is an important resource for subsistence and cultural use in the Kawerak region, especially among coastal communities.
The project directly contributed to knowledge repatriation by reuniting Kawerak region tribes with information about where their heritage is located in Midwest museums. By reuniting communities with this information, they can make informed decisions about pursuing requests for physical repatriation and support their cultural heritage preservation goals. We would like to thank Kawerak Inc.'s Social Science Program Office, especially Social Science Program Director, Dr. Julie Raymond Yacobian, and Program Manager Lisa Alana. We would also like to thank the knowledge holders, Rose Fosdick, Linda Guller-Gergen, Truman Kava, Leora Kennick, Charlotte Kutsana, Dolly Kugsgruk, Harold McToyuk, Ruth Ojanen, Grace Minnix, and the late Samuel McKeoch. We would also like to recognize the research assistants of the MU3D Heritage Informatics Lab, specifically Brendan Meyerhoff, Peyton Smith, and Addison Villier for their contributions to data entry and data analysis. Thank you to our lab PI and MA advisor, Dr. Medeia Csoba DeHass, and the folks at the MU Art Tech Hub, especially PI Dr. Sheila Grant and Program Manager Lisa Dahl for their continued support. Thank you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right. Well, thank you, Abby and Lily. That was very interesting. And before we do questions, the Strait Science audience, we appreciate you speaking with us, taking the time, and it's 10 o'clock, is that right? 10 p.m. for you guys, and you're just starting questions. So we really appreciate it. And this is a time where I always ask the Strait Science audience to throw a little love for our speakers in the chat box, or people can do whatever, electronic wonders nowadays with Zoom. Because it's never easy to be a public speaker, much less straight science speaker, especially at night, in the middle of the night for you guys. So with that, let me check the chat. All right. So any opening questions? I know I have some questions about the geocoding and the collections of walrus in Midwest museums. Anybody else want to open it up? All right. Well, first off, just as a thing, and I think we have some people in the audience that can help me there. I'm not an expert, but the ball on the poster, in your slide, that nice ball that was made, I think that might be ring seal skin.
Oh, the pillow?
The pillow.
The pillow.
Yeah.
Sorry,
It's
not
compact.
A ball, a pillow. And I know we've got some people on the audience that may be able to help much more than I could with that, but that's it right there. You said that was spotted seal. And that's probably because what was written down on is that right? Anyway, somebody can
Yes.
chime in if they want, but you may want to double check on that one. I'm not an expert, but that just caught my eye.
Okay.
So,
Thank you. We appreciate that.
so one of the things that's of interest to me is what's the history of, I never really I think of all that's been removed from the region, but I've never thought of the Midwest as a place. Are these collections because there were researchers or archaeologists or whatever that were doing work up here, or were these kind of donations one-offs to museums in the Midwest, just how people got them and decided, oh, what am I going to do with this? Is there a history in the Midwest of that sort of Arctic type work, or
Yeah,
did
these are
anything like that come up?
That's a great question. And it's a little bit of both. So I will say again, the University of Missouri Museum of Anthropology, we have the largest collection, and the majority of those pieces came from a donor named Dennis Corrington. And he was an alumni of the university, but he also had a trading post in Nome for many years. And so he had formed a lot of connections with people throughout the region, and they would you know, um, he would either purchase things or he would come into his possession. And so he brought those with him when he came back to Missouri. And so that's why we have this gigantic collection at the museum.
And
There are
what was his name again? I'm sorry.
Dennis Corrington.
Dennis Corrington. Does anyone what was his shop's name or his business? Do you remember?
I'm not
That's a
sure
pretty interesting
exactly
connection.
the name of his shop, but it was a trading post in Nome.
Okay. Hopefully that might ring a bell to somebody in the audience. I don't know. But if it does, audience member, if you know it, give us something in the chat a little bit more about that. That's pretty interesting. You have a direct Midwest Nome connection there.
Yes. I just want to highlight Julie. She is the director of the Kawerak Inc Social Science Program Office, and she has a link in the chat to some 3D models that we are working with. Jim Dory has a question about what year was the shop open? That's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't have those specific years, but I believe he donated his collection in the early 1980s. So it was sometime before then.
All right. And on oh, you're getting a thumbs up from Jim. That's good. On the density kernel map for walruses, that is interesting. The data, usually there's 18,000 data points. These are walrus biological data points, not archaeological?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's actually tracking data from USGS. Yeah, the big data set, it's where Pacific walruses are, they're like their natural habitat, so the Bering and Chukchi Sea on the Russia side and the US side. I cut it down to just the Kawerak region where it has over 18,000 points, just to see where the hotspots are in the Kawerak region, to see where it collates with the collection pieces, and most of the walrus related pieces um, in the collections were from St. Lawrence Island, and this map shows that most of the walruses in the region are from St. Lawrence Island, so the data matches pretty well.
All right. That's that USGS, that's when they put the tags on. That may be somewhat seasonal. That's a wonderful map. You might want to, yeah, that's a wonderful map. So the Bering Strait region, all those walruses are going to go through the Bering Strait by Diomede Whales and Shishmaref and up on the Chukotkin coast that you can't see in your map. So it's a curious thing. But now I understand it. These are more from a research project where they tagged the walrus probably at a certain season.
Yeah.
Certainly, St. Lawrence Island is home to, walrus in St. Lawrence Island. That's home. But but it's interesting your map how that. So thank you for explaining that data because it looks like they don't go up north too hot, but they do.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, it was a very large data set and it did go all the way up. So,
All right. And thank you. There's in the chat, there's a obituaries. Thank you, Julie and Medeia, for the obituary for that fella from Nome who had the 1970 trading post opened. Okay. And then Austin, thank you for adding in Austin Amasic. Thank you for sharing that. That caught my eye. The ball, you might want to ask the current caretakers of that. I'm sorry, you said it was a
it's a pillow.
Oh, pillow, sorry. Because I think that is mislabeled in the museum. Nothing on your end there, but that sure, just follow up on that. Austin Amasic is also I would say he's confirming that. So he'd be more of a expert on skins. So there's a good example of what you're doing is important, right? Even that, just communicating that back, you can take that back and they can make that correction. It may seem small, but I don't think so. I think that shows the sort of corrections and betterment that come from integrating science or the science of what you're doing with our regional communities here.
Yes, of course.
Thanks,
And that's a good point too of a lot of the things that we do see in the museums, whether it is the name of the piece or the type of material, it is often, sometimes incorrect because the person who was writing that information may have no knowledge of the region or any of the materials that were actually present. So that can be a real challenge too when we come across something and it doesn't quite make sense for the region. So it's very helpful to have local knowledge, especially in working with knowledge holders who are so helpful and kind of are able to provide that expertise knowledge of the region and materials.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to add to that is I don't think I mentioned it during when I was talking, but not everything in the museums are labeled walrus ivory. A lot of them are just labeled ivory. So just kind of as a general, I included everything that was labeled ivory in my data, just to make sure.
Are you thinking that it could be some other kind of animal?
I was told that it also could be mammoth ivory, depending on how old it is.
Probably many more in the audience would be able to help, but the difference between walrus ivory and elephant or mammoth ivory or modern day elephants is it's very strikingly different. So you should be able to see these. It's almost like the tusk has a core, sort of a jumbled core, and then you can see the enamel on the outside. And elephant ivory is more like rings on a tree.
Yeah.
And so
I was able to make most of those distinctions at the University of Missouri, and then a few at Milwaukee Public Museum because I actually was able to see those and to handle them and actually get a better idea of what they looked like. But the museums that I wasn't able to touch or I wasn't able to necessarily see a picture of, I couldn't decipher whether it was mammoth ivory or walrus ivory, so I just included it.
Okay. Well, wonderful. That's an interesting. You guys are on an interesting quest. What are next steps? Do you move out of the Midwest and go to, I mean, I think people know probably the big, I don't name a Smithsonian or there's probably something in Washington, D.C. I think there's an indigenous museum actually at the national level in Washington, D.C. Is that right?
Yes, there's the National Museum of the American Indian.
There you go. So thank you for that. So are you then expanding? Because it's very interesting to think of Midwest and there's these collection or these pieces. Are you taking that further?
That's a great question. And for this specific project, the focus was just on the Midwest region, again, because we were interested in looking and identifying those smaller hidden collections. So if we think about the Smithsonian, some of those pieces and some of those collections are more accessible and you can have some little bit of easier interaction. But as far as kind of this project, it is focused to the Midwest region. And for the future, if there is other interest, Kawerak can kind of decide and make those decisions about what other regions and what other states to kind of focus on and, move forward that way.
All right.
But mhm.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm just looking through the chat and go ahead, Julie. I see your hand up. Floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. I don't know if you all have these numbers off the top of your head because I don't, but the amount of photographs and data that Lily and Abby and the rest of the team have documented over the course of this project is truly amazing and overwhelming. So I don't know if you all have just kind of an estimate of like the number of 2D photographs that were taken and that kind of thing, because it really, I think, illustrates how much work you all have done.
I just roughly put numbers together. I believe it's right around 2,000 between the three museums that we photographed. But I could be wrong. I just roughly threw those numbers together.
And actually, I don't know if you guys, oh, go ahead, Julie. I didn't mean to. Are you,
Oh no, I was done.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. Got so excited. I was clicking on your link and I was like, man, that you should show that. What's that? A minute 40? You should show. Can you share that YouTube or you want me to throw it in here just to show kind of what you did?
Yeah, I'm
Julie
not sure how to
did
share it,
something.
but go ahead if you are technologically savvy enough to do it, because I'm not.
All right. You'll probably get some weird ads, but let me see. I have to undo you guys. So if you stop sharing and then let's see. Wonder. Bear with me, everybody. I go like this, and then I go like. I'm also dealing with a computer that's not mine. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. I'll try to make it full screen. Is
Yeah,
that
and
coming across?
it is, and there's no sound, so
Okay.
But we could do maybe a little narration. So
There
this
you go.
is a walrus piece. Abby, you probably know more about this piece than I do.
Not necessarily. I believe it's around a foot long. It has walrus ivory. It's at Hood Museum of Art.
In New
I can't
Hampshire,
remember. Yeah.
this
But
is
what these models are, so I believe so it's showing on the corner the turntables and stuff. So that's photogrammetry. That's one of the two types of um 3D technologies that our lab uses. So photogrammetry is taking multiple overlapping 2D photographs and turning them into virtual 3D models. We use the thing I can't think off the top of my head, but we use reality capture to make those 3D models out of the 2D photographs. We also use structured light scanning, which is the other 3D technology that we use, or that uses a Lily, I think you would know better, but could you explain geocoding? Not geocoding.
we use
Structured light scanning. There we go.
structured light. Structured light scanning emits a blue ray light technology that kind of documents the surface of the piece. Kay, would you mind going back through that one more time?
All right. Let me see if I can find it.
And then this go around, I'm sure there are questions maybe about the actual pieces, and we could maybe provide a little info about those specific pieces.
Now, I am not technologically savvy, so bear with me.
doing great.
How's that?
Perfect.
Can you see it? Okay.
So, like Abby mentioned, this is a walrus pipe. This is from St. Lawrence Island. Oh, hi, Leora. And this has multiple actually walrus faces carved into this piece. Thank you, Julie. Julie provided more in-depth information about this specific walrus piece. This is a kickball, a women's kickball. It's also located at Dartmouth College's Hood Museum of Art, and it is also from St. Lawrence Island. And this is again, these are all 3D models. This is a piece of a
It's a
wood
wooden
bowl.
bowl.
And yes, it was collected by Charles McAlpine and is currently housed at the Milwaukee Public Museum. McAlpine was a large collector and also had many connections with the Kawerak region. And many of his pieces are at the Milwaukee Public Museum. And this is that needle case that Abby presented and shared in her presentation. Here you can see this figure, this man with a harpoon hunting these seals. And then as we turn to the other side, you should see two men with rifles chasing bears. And in one of our interviews with knowledge holders on that needle case, there are mountains that are believed to be the Glick Glick Mountains. I believe, I'm not sure if I said that right, but just outside of Nome.
Right. So, boy, I'm glad. Thank you, Julie, for putting that link on there, because that is really eye-opening to me what you do. I'm a bit of a Luddite, and I think that seeing such an object 3D like that, unbroken, you're sort of like floating with it. That's fantastic. Austin, I see your hand is up. The floor is yours.
Yeah, hey, thanks. Yeah, great information. I guess I want to say, um, these historic pieces, when they were removed from our region, there's an element of harm. I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your presentation. I don't know if you mentioned this or not, but there's an element of harm that occurs, to our culture when these things were taken. And like in some of these cases, they've been gone for quite a long time. And in the case of like things that we're dealing with now, like the Graphite One mine, that will potentially destroy a lot of historic sites, cultural sites. Some of these, if in fact the Bow Needle case does depict the Kigluake Mountains, and it has some connection to those cultural sites. I'm just very concerned about how information is shared back to us, how information is repatriated back to us, and possibly even pieces repatriated back to us, because these are ours. I don't know under what circumstances these things were taken from our region. Maybe they were sold, maybe they were taken without permission. I don't know, but there's a significant element of harm that is tied to these pieces taken from our region.
Yes, thank you for sharing. One of the main parts of our project was knowledge repatriation. So that with Kawerak and the 9 knowledge holders that worked with us, Kawerak will own all of the data, all of the information, all of the models, everything at the conclusion of the project, so that everybody from the communities can view them and have that knowledge that we co-produce together, which is why we use our co-production knowledge framework. We also have a step into physical repatriation. So we put, especially for the University of Missouri, we put the people of Kawerak in contact with the physical repatriation or NAGPRA coordinator. So that's also available for people in the community and Kawerak. And I believe Kawerak has people within their nonprofit that will help with that process as well.
So this is gay physical repatriation. Thank you, Austin, for your thoughts there, and that's really important. And for me, I was going to ask at the end, when does the region get these back? So I guess is physical repatriation the return of physically the return long term, not just a loan, but a return to the region. So that you're
Yes.
answering that. Thank you. Is there, and Julie, this may be for you, are there plans, if they are able to do that, are there plans to have Kawerak be the keeper of those, or like working with the Nome Museum or the university or some museum in Alaska, or is that for Kawerak, or thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks, Kay. That is definitely a future step. And I would also say before I fully answer that in the course of doing this work and visiting collections, there's at least two items that are already in the process of being repatriated directly to family members here in the Nome region. And hopefully there will be more. Getting physical repatriation wasn't the end goal of this project. It was to see what is out there in the world and then to do this digital documentation of things. But of course, as we all know, return of the objects back home, as Austin was saying, is really an important potential future part of this too. So now that we know what's out there in the museums that Lily and the project have been in touch with, a next step, as I kind of just put there in the chat, will be if any tribes in the region want to transfer the digital data that we now have from this project out of Kawerak stewardship into tribal stewardship. That is a next step that absolutely will happen. And then, if there are requests to find out even more about what is in these specific collections and how the items can be repatriated, those are conversations that still need to happen. If a tribe was not able to take physical ownership of the item back, like into their home community, I think Katirvik Cultural Center would certainly be a viable option.
Wonderful.
Lots of different caveats that go along with all of that, but these are all future steps that this project was kind of laying the groundwork for.
Right. And then if communities are watching this recording or reading about this project or whatever, can they then should they go to Kawerak? Should they go to the University of Missouri to sort of learn what pieces are out there? And then
Yes.
maybe they can see like, oh, actually that's
Mm-hmm.
my great grandfather or whatever. And then
Yes.
come to who? You or
Yep,
Kawerak?
absolutely. Anyone can reach out to me directly,
Okay.
juliery@kawerak.org. I'll put that in the chat too.
Yep.
Or anyone in our social science program. Lisa Alana has played a really important, large role in this project too. She couldn't join us tonight. So yeah, people can reach out directly to Kawerak, and the project team is also in the process of pulling together like spreadsheets and other documents of like, these are all the items that came from Elam, and these are all the items that came from Diomede. And then we'll be giving that information to tribes to initiate that kind of next steps conversation to see what people would like to do. Because when we went into this, we had no idea what we were going to find and where items, would be today. So now that we have a good sense of that and all of that information, we'll be sharing that out and talking about what next steps are and whether or not people even want Kawerak to be involved. We don't have to be involved in next steps, but we're available to talk about that too.
All right. Well, thank you for that. For people who may be looking to learn more about this, they can contact Kawerak and so forth. So that's wonderful. And then Abby and Lily, my question is, when you were working with all these Midwest museums and you're talking about Bering, this region, and were there any kind of, I don't know, were people glad to see that people were looking for their regional items again, or was there surprise, or what was the general response to your project when you approached all these different groups or museums?
Yeah, that's a great Great question. So there were a lot of reactions from museums. They were really excited that people were interested and kind of helping them in a way of kind of, like I had mentioned before, sometimes museums don't necessarily have the regional knowledge of what these pieces are or how they're made or what they're made from. And so, and kind of with our request, I think that really piqued their interest that, that there are these relationships that need to be formed between museums and communities. And through those connections, they can, enrich both the knowledges of these pieces. And so I think museums, again, were excited, but also there was great excitement from the community members, the knowledge holders that we spoke to. They were really fascinated and had a lot of questions about why are these pieces here? Where have they been? How did they get here? So a lot of the questions that we talked about today. And so it was a lot of questions and a lot of thinking and kind of work to do, but it's exciting that we get to provide and share this with Strait Science and also the community. And like Julie mentioned, this is the first step of potential other aspects and avenues of this research to follow.
All right. Well, that's great. And Debbie, I see, will a copy of the presentation and link to the presentation be sent to the attendees? Yes. And we also have, I'll be sending them the link, and this is the link I'll put in the chat. Oop. Come on, I've got a computer that's not mine, and the mouse is not set up. It's chasing it, trying to find it again. So this is Strait Science YouTube site, and there. And if you click on that, there's copies of, I think we have like 100 and some 70 recordings of different topics, and the topics have to deal with the Bering Strait region for the most part. And that's where they will be available to the public. We are public servant of the region. So that would be, if you want to Google that, that's UAF Strait Science YouTube. And enjoy those. So that's where it'll be ending up as well for everybody. So, and that will be, we share that link, and we have the invitation list, the email list for here for the Strait Science, and we also share on this site so that people can hear it. A lot of times we're a pretty logistically unique region, and both electronically we have logistic issues and weather issues and all kind of issues, but people here, when they want to know something, they will find it. They will find a way to get an answer. And so that's where this internet came in handy, and to put it on YouTube. So people on their own schedule, when there's time and whatever, people all over can watch from the Bering Strait region. So. And there's a thing, Leora, we can send you the link directly once the presentation is posted. So that's great. Thank you, Medeia. And I'll be in touch with Abby and Lily. So fantastic. Go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, I know we're getting close to the end here, so I just wanted to take a second and on behalf of Kawerak, just say that it has been really wonderful to work with Abby and Lily and the rest of the team. Abby and Lily are young early career researchers, and they have been very respectful, very curious, and just great young researchers to work with. And we're really grateful for the immense amount of effort that they have put into this. Like, can't even tell you guys how much work Lily and Abby and some of the other research assistants have done. They've been truly committed to this work and to serving the region and coming up with products and information that are really, I think, going to be valuable to the region for many years to come. So thank you very much on behalf of Kawerak for all the work that you all have done. We really appreciate you.
And
Thank you, Julie.
We appreciate you both as well. And I say, now that it's good you're young, your early career, as Julie just said, hey, you're getting some nice electronic hearts and stuff. That's wonderful. And I'd say, bring these things back if you can. And I think your connections, whether you can or can't, that's okay. But just even reaching out and working through Kawerak or the tribes, however you do it in the future, however Julie does her magic, I think it's a wonderful start on a very important topic of bringing awareness, repatriating, and even just awareness of where things went, where they are, and how well you've done with the visuals to be able to click on something and be able to immediately check on whatever you can, whatever you're looking for. So thank you.
Thank you, Gay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? If not, we'll let these nice people go home. Actually, if you guys want to stay on, and Medeia, if you all want to stay on, or Julie, you're welcome to stay on too for the post party. That would be great. And Straight Science, the next Straight Science will be on Thursday, January 22nd. Hard to believe we're already getting into late January. Honestly, 2026 feels like we should be closing out and getting ready for 27. It's been a busy 2 weeks, I think, for everyone. And it will be we're going to have the NOAA Race Division provide the results of the 2025 bottom trawl survey of the Bering Sea. And this year, they're going to combine the whole thing. Both they were able to do the Southern Bering Sea and the Northern Bering Sea. And so we will get a first glimpse of where we are with all the fish that are and other creatures that are on the bottom. Especially, we know that the issue of pollock and cod has been a big one with the water temperature change. So stay tuned or I should say, tune in on Thursday, January 22nd to hear the NOAA Race Division results on their bottom trawl survey for the Bering Sea, both northern and southern. So with that, we thank you all and we'll say good night. Have a good night, everyone.